Good afternoon, students. Yes, good afternoon, Miss Nidhi, Almaz, Miss P. Great. So today we are starting a new chapter. After completing registration, we will now move into the documentation part. जो documents बनाते हैं, actual में कैसे बनाना चाहिए, उसके बारे में आज का chapter है. So today we are discussing how to prepare the documents. Right? We have the topic name as tax invoice. So we will see what is the requirement of tax invoice when it is required, and it will not be restricted to tax invoice. It will be also the related documents, that is e-invoice, then receipt voucher, credit note, debit note, all of that we will discuss. Okay, so it may sound that this will become very theoretical, but what we'll do is if you make it little interactive, it will be of interest. Otherwise, what will happen, it will become really monotonous. So apart from sending chats, wherever a topic is completed, I would encourage you that you raise your hand so we can unmute you and we can have a discussion, because the topic itself is such that you need to be constantly be with the topic. So one of the ways to being with the topic is I'll always ask question. Even if you know it, just kind of paraphrase it, saying that this is what is my thinking. Is this correct or no? So that gives confidence to you, and that will get retained also for a longer duration. Ultimately, the objective of this classes is that itself, right? That whatever we are studying, you should remember it till your exams, correct? And if you're attempting for September, so this is a good time to at least be with me so that you can kind of finish off this GST chapter, because GST is very simple and the marks allotted also is less. So if you can read it and understand it in the class itself, then you will save a lot of time in reading and revising it. So pay attention for this. Okay. So we are discussing on tax invoice. So in the tax invoice, what we have to do is there a requirement of tax invoice in the law? Does it happen that we make a supply but we don't raise invoice? Is that possible? That's not possible, right? So every transaction has to be supported with a document, and that document in case of a supply is an invoice. Now, what is the nature of the invoice, or where did this invoice come from? Did GST create this term, or was it there even before also? What do you think? Before GST also, right? So GST has not created this. You're all absolutely right. It was there prior to GST also, because what happens is every transaction what is taken place between a seller and buyer, right? Correct, Nilesh. Before GST, it was there, but it was not GST invoice. It was a just an invoice. Correct. You're all right. So before GST came in, there was a document, because whenever a contract takes place between a buyer and seller, that is when, like, a buyer will say that I want this document, so he will raise a PO. PO means purchase order. So he wants to purchase something, he will raise a purchase order. Basis that purchase order, the supplier or the seller will prepare the goods, keep the goods ready, and then he will sell it. So how do you bring down this contract? Because orally also, if somebody says, what is the evidence that supply has taken place? Oral contracts are also permitted, but it has to get reduced down or it has to get brought down to a document. Now that document is invoice. So whatever we had agreed at, we are concluding it in the invoice. जब मैंने किसी transaction को agree किया हूं कि मैं आपको ये रेट पे सप्लाई करूंगा, तो सिर्फ ओरल कम्युनिकेशन से कुछ फायदा नहीं होगा, उसको मुझे क्या करना पड़ेगा, उसको मुझे एक डॉक्यूमेंट में क्लोज करना पड़ेगा. उस डॉक्यूमेंट का नाम है इनवॉइस. ओके, सो दैट्स वे यू विल सी दैट इट इज अ फर्स्ट characteristic of an invoice. It's a commercial instrument which is issued by a supplier to the recipient, because whatever contract or understanding we have to reduce it, because otherwise if I don't raise the invoice but I ask you for a payment, you will tell on what basis do I make the payment. So invoice will be that document which will substantiate that goods have moved. It will have the essential information which will act as a proof to show that supply has happened. So it's a commercial instrument, because even if GST law wasn't there, or there were no taxation on any commodity, still there has to be a document. That's why to bring that commercial angle or the convert the commercial transaction between us, this invoice will be issued. So it's a commercial instrument which is issued by a supplier to the recipient. Now coming to GST law, where is the mandate? Where is the requirement to issue an invoice? The GST law under section 31 mandates for issue of invoice or a bill of supply. What is this issue of invoice or bill of supply? Is it optional कि मैं चाहूँ तो invoice raise कर सकता हूँ, चाहूँ तो bill of supply? No. In bill and invoice same? Actually no, Somya, because there is a difference between bill of supply and invoice. When I raise an invoice on which tax is payable, that is called a tax invoice or an invoice. And when I don't charge GST, when I will not charge GST, when my goods are exempted, that time I have to give an invoice, but I should mention taxes are zero. So if the taxes are zero, then I will raise a bill of supply. Tell me another instance when I will raise a bill of supply. So whenever there is no tax which is chargeable, that time I will raise an invoice. So one is exempted goods or exempted services. Second is, yes, getting good answers. It is right in case of composition supply. So in case of a composition supply also, I will not raise a invoice. I will raise a bill of supply. Good. So now you understand, invoice will be where tax is charged and bill of supply will be in such situations where tax is not charged. In case of bill to ship to model, in case of a bill to ship to model, tax is not charged and it is not a sale transaction also. So you will not issue a invoice nor a bill of supply. In case of a bill to ship to model, you will raise a delivery challan, because you need the document for movement of the goods. It is not a sales transaction, but it is a supply transaction under GST. So you will raise a delivery challan. And Chauhan Tej is asking, what about zero rated, sir? Because zero rated also I don't charge. Yes, you don't charge, but it is zero rated, which means the tax is zero. It is not exempted. So in case of zero rated supply also, you should raise a tax invoice itself, because tax is zero, but you will not raise a bill of supply. Bill of supply is only for exempted and composition. Good question, Tej Prakash. Next, why is the invoice essential from the recipient's perspective? Recipient will say, "Aapne bol diya, bhej diya mujhe goods, I will pay you." No, that is not the only criteria of having a good relationship. Invoice is necessary from the supplier's perspective because Section 31 says it, and he will have to use that to file his returns. But in case of input tax receiver, one of the conditions we have seen under Section 16(2) is the receiver should be in possession of the original invoice. So he should have the original invoice with him, without which he cannot claim the credit. So it also helps in claiming the credit. If you do not have invoice, your credit can be denied. The good part of the invoices, there is no standard format which is prescribed कि आपको इसी स्टैंडर्ड में करना चाहिए. जैसे लेफ्ट साइड में आपको डेट देना चाहिए, फिर जीएसटी नंबर, फिर राइट साइड में कैटेगरी होना चाहिए, ऐसा नहीं. So there is no prescribed format, but it only says that what are the contents which is required. Those contents should be in the invoice, either based on your requirements. GST could be total, then GST, or total separate, GST separate, anything is fine. So whatever are the contents which is asked for in the section, if those are mentioned, that is sufficient. So there is no format as such, but it only says about the contents which is required. We know when we should raise an invoice, right? We have seen this in the time of supply. Is handwritten invoice valid for claiming ITC, or printed invoice mandatory? So the law says invoice has to be issued. It doesn't say it should be handwritten or printed. Even if it is handwritten, it is a valid invoice. And if it is printed, still it's a valid invoice. No mandate that it should be a printed invoice itself. Anything is fine as long as the contents, what is said, if those are mentioned, उतना काफी है. आप हाथ से लिखिए या टाइप कीजिए, लेकिन आप अगर टाइप हैंड रिटन करते हो, देन यू हैव टू, फिर से आप उसको डिटेल्स को GSTR1 में तो देना ही पड़ेगा. यू विल हैव टू गिव दैट फाइलिंग ऑफ GSTR1 and 3B online. Your invoice can be manual, no problem. Who is the authority to accept and deny ITC, and where to claim in case we do not receive ITC from the supplier in GST return? So we have a section, very important section in GST, which is called a section 59. Now this 59 says that you have to go to an assessing officer, give him all the invoices and give him all the sales invoices and the purchase invoices. He will do the assessment, and based on which you can file the return. Every single invoice has to get assessed like that. Right? Now, who is this assessing officer? This section 59 says the assessing officer's name is self-assessment, which means that you yourself, you are supplying, you yourself have to do your own assessment. That's why the section is called self-assessment. You do not have to go to an officer outside for doing the assessment. You yourself are the authority to accept or deny the credit. If somebody has given you an invoice, if you want, claim it. If you don't want, don't take it. Okay. And then if you want to take it, then the provisions of the law has to be followed. There is no authority which is saying it is self-assessment, and you have to do the assessment, follow the provisions of the law, and you can decide it. Okay. And then you decide based on the conditions what is given, whether to claim ITC or not. Clear, Nilesh? So don't get worried that all your invoices will be scrutinized by any officer or something. Nobody is sitting there. You do the assessment. After that, if the officer feels that he is suspicious, he is having any report or any kind of analytical data which says that your returns are incorrect, you are hiding some taxes, then he will do the second round of assessment. First round of assessment, you and me who are sitting and taking the registration, we can do it. Sir, I am not registered. Is it necessary to issue invoice? Not necessary, because all the provisions what we are discussing is with respect to a registered person. If you are not registered, you are outside the scope of the law. Once you registered, then you enter inside the scope of the law and you have to comply with it. If you're not registered, you are not registered because you're not liable for registration. If you're not registered, but you're still liable for registration, then you're a taxable person. Okay. You may not be a registered person, but you're a taxable person, because any person who is not registered, but his turnover has crossed the threshold limit, he is called as a taxable person. For him, this law will apply. But if you're unregistered and if you're below the threshold limit, then you do not have to issue any invoice. So have to have a proper distinction why you're not registered. I am not registered, but recipient is registered. Okay, so what? I am not registered. I'm a chartered accountant. I am not registered. So, and recipient to whichever companies are provide my services, they are registered. So, what? How does it matter? In this case, invoice mandatory. So there'll be a invoice, not a tax invoice for whatever transactions they're doing. As we had said in the first slide itself, invoice is a commercial document for any commercial transaction. What you take, whether you're registered or unregistered, you will have to give the invoice because of the commercial nature. So you give the invoice and the receiver will pay the amount to you, but not as per the GST law, because you're not part of the GST law. Now, any more doubts? Okay. So we were discussing on the aspect of time of supply. When should you raise an invoice? There is a different time limit for when issuance of invoice in case of taxable supply of goods, and another time of uh, guidelines for deciding time of supply for taxable supply of services. For taxable supply of goods, where the supply involves movement of goods or the supply does not involve movement of goods. If the supply involves movement before removal, if the supply does not involve movement at the time of delivery of the goods or making these goods available. Before this event, you have to raise a invoice. And in case of taxable supply of services, within 30 days from the date of supply of service, and for an insurance or company, whenever there is a supply between distinct person, they will have to raise an invoice. And normal time for supply of service is 30 days, but for a insurance banking company or NBFC, that gets hiked up and you get 45 days time. So you can raise a invoice within 45 days time for a banking company, insurance company, and NBFC. Others, whatever transactions you're completing, within 30 days, you raise an invoice. Now, second scenario, in case of a insurance or banking company who's doing transaction between distinct person. What is this distinct person? It says any taxable supplies between distinct person. You are aware of this term? Your answer is not complete, Jayendra. Even Chauhan, your answer is not complete. Miss P, your answer also is not complete. Who is a distinct person? We have discussed this, and definitely uh, I have gone through this at the time of registration, and even in the other chapters, you would have definitely heard this. Right. Correct. So Ishan, Rihanna, and Miss Priya have given the correct answer. It is to be distinguished. Person with two or more registration under same PAN is called as distinct person. Absolutely right. So a person with two or more registrations under the same PAN. You have some people are saying that from one branch to another branch, it becomes a distinct person. Not necessary, because both the branches may be having only one registration in the state. So then you will not call them as distinct person. The criteria for calling it as a distinct person is you are registered in one location with multiple GST numbers. If you are all having 10 branches but one GST number, you are all one unit. then you do not have to make or charge GST for transaction between one branch to another branch. You're all one. You're having one registration. But in case where you're having transaction from one branch which is registered and another branch which is separately registered, then it is distinct person. Okay. Any transaction between two different registrations within the same state is a distinct person, and any transaction between a registered person in one state and another person who is in another state, whether he's registered or unregistered, doesn't matter. Once he is in a different state, you are called as distinct persons. Okay. So that is the definition of distinct person. Okay. Now, in case of transaction between a insurance, banking company, NBFC, or telecom, which wherein there is a transaction between a taxable supplies between distinct persons. Matlab, each branch, if it is having, say, a banking company and each branch is registered separately, then any transaction between one branch to another branch, the time of issuance of invoice is at the time of recording in the supplier's book or before the expiry of the quarter. With before this time limit, you have to raise a invoice. Date of supply of service and date of provision of service is the same. Date of supply of service and date of provision of service, yes, you can say that it is same. Date of supply of service itself is the date of provision of service. You're right. The legal term uses date of supply of service. Clear? So before this stipulated time, we have to raise an invoice. So because there will be various transactions that you have received the payment, then you have made a supply, then supply, after you make a supply, there is some testing happening. Goods are ready, but receiver has to do a QC. A lot of things will happen. So that's why the law has stipulated or law has specified what will be the time within which you should raise an invoice. Give an example for before expiry of quarter. Okay. So there is a banking company, or say insurance company, banking we have taken, insurance company has one branch in the city of Bangalore and one more branch in the city of Mysore. Now they have some kind of a transaction wherein they have taken common cloud services. Okay. Now from one branch, they have taken it for all the branches. They have to get money from the other branch. Since it is same entity and tax is already paid, now that branch will give later on. That's fine, right? So what happens is at the year end, they will do a entry. But the law says wherever there is a transaction of this common cloud services, you have to, at the end of the quarter, before the expiry of the quarter, every quarterly, you have to identify such services where you will bill your other branch and raise an invoice on a quarterly basis. So whatever cloud usage is happening from Bangalore to the Mysore branch, for which invoices come from Bangalore, they will have to cross charge and raise an invoice. So this is called as a supply between distinct person, and they have to raise invoice before the end of the quarter. Okay. Now, next is time of supply for continuous supply. So in case of distinct person, GST may or may not be charged. If there is movement of goods, it has to definitely get charged. And in case of supply of service, okay, supply of service, it has to be charged. So there is no option of not charging. But in the rules, we have one condition that when the recipient is registered, okay, and he is eligible to claim the credit, then nil also is a value. So in such case, charging of cross charging of the invoice may not be necessary. Okay, I hope you understood, Ishan. Your question was, should I charge GST? Once you raise the invoice, you have to definitely charge. Okay, If you have not raised the invoice, then it is optional. But if you raise an invoice, then there is no option that you should charge or not charge. If you have raised the invoice, you have to charge. But the question before that is, should I raise an invoice or not? Correct. But invoice, yes.
Hello, good afternoon, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, Nidhi.
सर कंटिन्यूअस सप्लाई से पहले ड्यू में क्रेडिट नोट और वो क्या है?
हेलो,
यस सर.
बोलिए, आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही
सर
है.
क्या मॉड्यूल में रिलेवेंट डेफिनेशन में क्रेडिट नोट और डेबिट नोट दिया हुआ है.
ओके.
वो क्या है सर? वो उसको एक्सप्लेन कर दीजिए.
क्रेडिट नोट,
कंटिन्यूअस
डेबिट
सप्लाई
नोट, इनवॉइस के बाद हम उसमें समझेंगे क्या है वो.
अच्छा, ओके सर.
So, Ishan, your question is, but sir, invoice may or may not be tax invoice, no? No, if you're registered, you will raise only a tax invoice. If you're unregistered or you're registered but you're making exempt supply or composition, then you will raise a bill of supply. But if you're registered, you will always issue a tax invoice only. Okay? So, when you make any transaction with another branch of supply of services, there it is not necessary that you raise a invoice. So 45 days में तो insurance or banking or from banking or insurance services. Anything within the sector, it is not cross utilization from insurance to banking, not like that. Within the insurance company, if you're providing branch services from one branch to another, and within a banking company, if you're providing from one branch to another branch, from one distinct person to another distinct person. Okay, so this is the time limit for issuance of invoice. Now, continuous supply. What is the continuous supply? We know the definition of continuous supply of goods is separate. Continuous supply of services is separate. Continuous supply of goods means a supply of goods which is provided or agreed to be provided over any of these documents or any of these items, which is some kind of a wire, cable, pipeline or other conduit for which the supplier invoices the recipient on a regular or periodic basis, right? Where there is a wire, cable, pipeline or something is there through which the goods have been delivered on a continuous basis. That is continuous supply of goods. In case of continuous supply of services, there is no such document or there is no such channel. So, continuous supply of service would mean any service wherein you're providing continuously for a period exceeding 3 months. Okay. Wherever there is supply of services which is provided or agreed to be provided continuously on a recurrent basis, where the obligation is for more than 3 months, then it is continuous supply of services. करेक्ट. कंटिन्यूस सप्लाई का मतलब जिसमें लगातार काम होता रहे. करेक्ट. तो सर्विस के लिए मिनिमम 3 महीने से ज्यादा होना चाहिए और कंटिन्यूस सप्लाई ऑफ गुड्स के लिए लगातार सप्लाई होना चाहिए through any of these. Sir, conveyor belt for applying coal and bauxite, yes, that is also. That's why they've said, or any other conduit. So not necessary wire, cable. If it is a belt also, wherein it is continuous supply of coal and bauxite, yes, definitely it is also a continuous supply of goods. Now, what is the time within which you should raise an invoice in case of continuous supply of goods, where successive statement of accounts or successive payments are involved? Because you have to see the contract. In the contract are the terms of arrangement between the supplier and recipient. Is there a mention of that you will get paid when there is a successive payment statement of accounts, or there is a successive payment involved? Right? Any of this is happening, then you have to raise an invoice before or at the time of each statement is issued or the payment is received. Wherever there is a condition that payment has to be made, वो पेमेंट आने से पहले आपको इनवॉइस रेज करना है, या फिर जब भी आप कुछ स्टेटमेंट देना है उसके हिसाब से, तो स्टेटमेंट के साथ आप इनवॉइस दे सकते हो. दैट इज द टाइम लिमिट फॉर कंटिन्यूअस सप्लाई ऑफ गुड्स. Okay. Continuous supply of services where the due date of payment is ascertainable from the contract, then on or before the due date. आपके कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में आप असरटेन कर सकते हो कि ये दिन पे आपका पेमेंट आएगा, आप कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स में लिख देते हो, then उसके पहले इनवॉइस रेज करना चाहिए. On the due on the when the due date of payment is not ascertainable, then when the supplier of service receives the payment, उसके पहले payment is linked to completion of an event. नाउ आई कैनॉट से कि मंथली मंथली आप मुझे पेमेंट दीजिए, क्योंकि सपोज एक कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है एक बिल्डिंग बनाने का, मेरा अपार्टमेंट है 6 फ्लोर में खरीद रहा हूं, लेकिन मैं सिर्फ 6 फ्लोर बनने पे मैं नहीं ले सकता हूँ, पूरा बिल्डिंग बनना चाहिए. ओनली देन आई कैन बाई इट, ओनली देन आई कैन गो एंड ऑक्यूपाई इट. सो द टर्म्स ऑफ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बिटवीन अ बिल्डर एंड द बायर विल बी दैट जब भी आप ईच फ्लोर वाइज रेस करोगे, एक फ्लोर बनाओगे, 2 फ्लोर बनाओगे, तब ऑन अ पीरियोडिक बेसिस यू हैव टू रेज अ इनवॉइस टू मी. तो मंथली नहीं हो सकता है, दैट कैन हैपन से वंस इन 2 months, वंस इन 3 months, whatever is the milestone which is received. So milestone जब खत्म होगा, then you will raise the invoice. That is this case where the payment is linked to a completion of an event. Then the time of supply will be before the date of completion of that event. ठीक है. न्यूज़पेपर चाहन इज नॉट अ कंटिन्यूअस सप्लाई ऑफ गुड, बिकॉज एक बार आपके पेपर आ गया, बस वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट खत्म हो गया, बस यू आर इंस्टेड ऑफ टेलिंग द न्यूज़पेपर पर्सन दैट एवरी डे गिव इट टू मी, यू हैव टोल्ड हिम इन एडवांस. बस वही फर्क है, बट सप्लाई ऑफ न्यूज़पेपर is not coming under continuous supply of goods. Successive statements and payments means जब उस कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में है कि ऑन अ पीरियोडिक बेसिस, सक्सेसिवली, ऑन अ रिकरेंट बेसिस, ऑन अ फिक्स्ड ड्यूरेशन, a statement has to be issued or a payment has to be made. That is the meaning of successive statement or successive payment. Due date of permanent, due date of payment is not ascertainable. ओके. जब आपका पेमेंट असरटेन नहीं कर सकते हो, एक कॉन्ट्रैक्ट ऐसा होता है जहां पे आप पेमेंट असर्ट कर सकते हो क्योंकि उसमें लिखा है कि आप मंथली मंथली मुझे पे करोगे, तो पेमेंट असरटेन हो गया है. लेकिन कुछ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट ऐसे होते हैं जहां पे कुछ पेमेंट का टर्म्स लिखा नहीं है, लेकिन सर्विस 3 महीने से ज्यादा हो रहा है, तो फिर वो कंटिन्यूस सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विस हो जाएगा. जब ड्यू डेट ऑफ पेमेंट असरटेन नहीं हो रहा है कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में, तब जब सप्लायर ओके तो पेमेंट आता है, उस टाइम पे उसको इनवॉइस रेज कर देना चाहिए. Good question, Soumya. Accordingly, if you see that whether the teaching of LVC will be considered as continuous supply since it is more than 3 months, तो आप बोल रहे हो कि मैं ज्यादा पढ़ा रहा हूं, आप मुझसे बोर हो गए हो. Well, so where it is continuous supply of services, that we have to see a contract, right? If the contract is one and it is saying that it is supply is happening on a continuously, then it is continuous supply. Now each teaching is a separate class, right? So you can treat it as a continuous supply of service also. Okay? So it will be treated as a continuous supply of service. But contrary to this will be a case of audit services. You go to do an audit, and during audit, what is happening? The time for completion of statutory audit of bigger companies takes a lot of time. So say you are taken more than 3 months to complete the audit. You have taken 5 months. Will that be treated as continuous supply of service? Any supply of service which is more than 3 months, will you call it as a continuous supply of service? Huh. Contract is clear in front of you, Ms. Priya, that it is a audit service. You have to do statutory audit. You have started from February and you have completed in September. It is about time, Golti, because in case of goods, it is movement on a continuous basis. But for services, there is no movement of goods, right? So if you see, again, I will share with you the definition of continuous supply of services. Then you decide and tell. There is a time limit. It says for a period exceeding 3 months. Okay. Most of the students have voted saying that no, it is not a continuous supply of service. And one or two students have said that yes, it is a continuous supply of service. So the answer is right, as what the majority has said. It is not a continuous supply of service because it is one service which is taking longer duration. So there is no continuous supply of service involved in that. It is one service which is taking a timeline of say 3 to 4 months. But where the service is getting completed on uh, a specific time, say like supply of internet. Okay, 1 month it is continuous and it is supply of service. And when this is a continuous thing, but you have entered into agreement saying that I will raise the invoice on a monthly basis. So that is an example of a continuous supply of service क्योंकि आपको service तो continue मिल रहा है. We are talking about a postpaid case. Most of the internet, DTH is all postpaid itself. That you can make the recharge anytime, but it is a continuous supply of service. But a statutory audit will not be like that. A statutory audit is one service which is taking longer duration. So audit, right, madam? It is not a continuous supply of service. Geo Air Fiber postpaid Wi-Fi service called continuous supply. Yes, that's a continuous supply. तो इसीलिए क्या होता है, पूरा सप्लाई खत्म कब होगा, जब तक आप यूज कर रहे हो तब तक जीएसटी वेट नहीं कर सकता है और ना तो फिर सप्लायर भी वेट कर सकता है. तो सप्लायर बोलता है आप कंटिन्यूस लीजिए, आप 1 साल 2 साल 10 साल लीजिए, लेकिन मैं आपको पीरियोडिकली इनवॉइस रेज करूंगा. तो जब वो पीरियोडिकली इनवॉइस रेज करता है, दैट इज द टाइम ऑफ सप्लाई फॉर जीएसटी ऑल्सो, और तभी आपको जीएसटी भी पे करना पड़ेगा. मकान टैक्स इज अ लेवी. तो वो कंटिन्यूस सप्लाई में नहीं आएगा. थी उसे कहेंगे कि वन टाइम चार्ज, कि जब उसको पे करना पड़ेगा आप तब पे करेंगे. सो वो कंटिन्यूस सप्लाई में नहीं आएगा. इन केस ऑफ ऑडिट, फाइनल पेमेंट विल बी मेड एंड नॉट पीरियोडिकल पेमेंट. दैट इज ट्रू. That is true. That is the reason it is not a continuous supply also, because had it been continuous supply, you would have at least mentioned in the contract that you have to make periodic payments, or you may have to make periodic milestones. So that's why audit is not a continuous supply, is what I am also concluded. Supply of labor till the completion of building house, not necessary, I would say, because uh, there it will be completed on a, yeah, or you can say when you are having a long term contract, provided the it is more than 3 months, because the time limit mentioned for supply of services, it should be for a period of more than 3 months. So if a labor supply is happening for completion of building house, yes, you can treat it. But again, there payment terms will come into our rescue and say that this is the payment terms based on which we will raise a GST invoice. Yes. Continuous supply. Second situation, supplier receiver service cannot understand. Yeah, I'll just show you that. So second situation is saying that in case of continuous supply of service where the due date of payment is not ascertainable, एक ऐसा कॉन्ट्रैक्ट होता है जहां पे आप लिखते हो कि आपको पीरियोडिकली पेमेंट करना पड़ेगा। एक और कॉन्ट्रैक्ट ऐसा होता है जब पीरियोडिकल पेमेंट लिखा नहीं है और ना तो आप असरटेन कर सकते हो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में। तब क्या होगा? तब जीएसटी तो लगेगा, लेकिन पूरा कॉन्ट्रैक्ट खत्म होने तक जीएसटी वेट नहीं कर सकता है, क्योंकि जीएसटी बोलता है कि अगर आपका कंटिन्यूस सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विस है और आपका कॉन्ट्रैक्ट 3 महीने से ज्यादा है, तो फिर कंटिन्यूस सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विस हो गया है, और आपको जीएसटी जब भी आपका पर्सन द रिसीवर ऑफ द सर्विस पे कर रहा है, दैट विल बिकम द टाइम ऑफ सप्लाई। ठीक है। नेक्स्ट इज टाइम ऑफ सप्लाई ऑफ गुड्स सेंट ऑन अप्रूवल बेसिस। जब भी आप गुड्स अप्रूवल पे बेचते हो, ठीक है, आपने बेचा नहीं है, सिर्फ अप्रूवल के दिया है, तो फिर जीएसटी कब लगेगा? द डेट व्हेन द बायर अप्रूव्स इट। बायर ने अप्रूव कर दिया है तो उस दिन रेस कीजिए। नहीं, बायर ने अप्रूव नहीं किया, वो अभी टाइम ले रहा है, जीएसटी टाइम नहीं लेगा। जीएसटी बोलेगा 6 महीने वेट करूंगा, तब तक आप पेमेंट कर दीजिए। आपका आपका कस्टमर का कंफर्मेशन चलते रहेगा, लेकिन मुझे जीएसटी 6 महीने के अंदर चाहिए। तो गुड सेंट ऑन अप्रूवल मतलब, जैसे आप कोई ज्वेलरी के शॉप में जाते हो और आपको पसंद नहीं आता है लेकिन उसको बेचना है, तो वो बोलता है ठीक है आप घर पे लेके जाइए, भाभी जी इसको दिखा दीजिए, पसंद आ गया तब आप लीजिए, वरना आपके पास रख दीजिए। ठीक है, आजकल तो गोल्ड के भाव इतने बढ़ गए कि ये कोई रिस्क नहीं लेगा। बस कुछ छोटी चीजें जहां पे बहुत वैल्यूएबल नहीं है, ऐसा होता है कि गुड्स अप्रूवल पे बेचते हैं, तो फिर वो जब तक अप्रूव नहीं करेगा तब तक मैं इनवॉइस रेज नहीं कर सकता हूँ। लेकिन जीएसटी बोलता है भैया 6 महीने हो गए, आप इनवॉइस रेज करो और मुझे जीएसटी पे करो। ठीक है। हाँ, इन केस ऑफ साड़ी शॉप, देखिए चौहान तेज प्रकाश को काफी एक्सपीरियंस है कि साड़ी के शॉप में आप जाते हो, खरीदते हो, और आप बोलते हो मैं भी पैसा नहीं दूंगा। अगर पैसा दे दिया तो वो तो सेल हो गया है। जब सेल नहीं हुआ है तब ये ऑन अप्रूवल बेसिस ट्रांजैक्शन होता है। नेक्स्ट इज व्हाट इज द पर्टिकुलर्स ऑफ अ टैक्स इनवॉइस, कि क्या क्या कंटेंट रहने चाहिए। इसके लिए मैंने एक लिस्ट बनाया है। दीज आर द पर्टिकुलर्स ऑफ अ टैक्स इनवॉइस, की ये कंटेंट्स रहने चाहिए। Name, address, and GSTN of the supplier, invoice number, it should be continuous numbering, date of issue, invoice number, date of issue, receipt, recipient is registered, अगर receiver registered है, then name, address, and GSTN are UIN of the recipient. Okay, and if recipient is unregistered, तो फिर अगर आपका वैल्यू मोर देन 50,000 है, नेम एंड एड्रेस, लेस देन 50,000 है, अनरजिस्टर्ड रिसिपिएंट में स्टिल रिक्वेस्ट की आप डिटेल्स डालो तो डालेंगे, वरना एटलीस्ट स्टेट तो आप मेंशन करोगे। बाद में एचएसएन, ठीक है। HSN क्या है कि हर एक गुड्स या हर एक सर्विस के लिए एक HSN कोड है अपने जीएसटी लॉ में, उसको स्पेसिफिकली मेंशन करना पड़ेगा। डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ गुड्स, देन क्वांटिटी ऑफ गुड्स, unit and unit quantity code thereof, total value of supply, total value of supply, taking into account discount or abatement, then rate of tax. रेट ऑफ टैक्स में भी अलग अलग करना पड़ेगा, सेंट्रल टैक्स, स्टेट टैक्स, इंटीग्रेटेड टैक्स, व्हाट इज द अमाउंट टैक्स इन रेस्पेक्ट ऑफ टैक्सेबल गुड्स और सर्विसेज, देन प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई, address of delivery, when tax, whether tax is payable on reverse charge, signature होना चाहिए, either physical signature or digital signature, and quick response code in specific cases. Okay, तो ये चीजें जरूरी है इन केस ऑफ इनवॉइस। जैसे मैंने कहा था कि ये सिर्फ लिस्ट ऑफ रिक्वायरमेंट्स है, आप इनवॉइस में कहीं पर भी डाल सकते हैं। Value of supply inclusive of tax? No, value of supply is exclusive of tax, because the value of supply is the value for which you are selling it and then adding the GST on it. So in case invoice is raised in fraudulent manner and he is unregistered person, who is going to take action on him? So the receiver will have to take action. He has to complain to the GST saying that he is collecting an amount as tax, but he is not registered. So if the receiver informs, then the GST authorities can take action against it. What is UIN? Unique Identification Number. Some people get GSTI number. Some authorities like the consulate office, etc., they will receive a UIN number. They will not receive a GST number. I'll just read out what is exactly UIN number. UIN is a unique identification number. It is a special type of GST registration for foreign diplomatic missions and embassies. जो foreign diplomatic mission और embassies होते हैं, उनके लिए UIN number यूज किया जाता है। Do we need to learn the particulars? Yes, you will have to learn the particulars. कि ये particulars are necessary. So if tax is on reverse charge basis, then this tax invoice is raised by the recipient? No, it is raised by the supplier if supplier is registered. And if the supplier is not registered, then the recipient will include it. Okay, only when the supplier is unregistered, then the recipient will raise it. Otherwise, supplier's invoice should be sufficient. Tax will be paid by the recipient. Suppose a lawyer, he is a big lawyer and his turnover crosses 20 lakhs. Now, in terms of taxable turnover, the annual aggregate turnover, even exempt turnover or turnover which is liable to RCM is included. So his turnover is crossing 20 lakhs, he will be registered. But GST will be paid by the recipient only. HSN डिटेल्स मतलब HSN डिटेल्स यही पूछेंगे चेतन की चौहान तेज की HSN कितने नंबर्स का रहना चाहिए, वो हम आगे देखेंगे। ठीक है, तो ये हो गया आपका डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ द इनवॉइस जो इनवॉइस में रहना चाहिए। नाउ विल गो टू कैसे होता है इनवॉइस जनरली, कि इतने सारे कंटेंट्स दिए गए हैं, लेकिन लॉ ये भी बोलता है कि अगर आप इतने सारे नहीं मेंशन कर सकते हो तो थोड़े मिनिमम तो मेंशन करो। वो क्या है मिनिमम रिक्वायरमेंट्स? जीएसटीएन ऑफ द सप्लायर, जीएसटीएन ऑफ द रिसिपिएंट, description of the goods, total value of supply, amount of the tax which is charged, what is the place of supply, at least ये conditions दे दीजिए, ये भी काफी है। Okay, so it says give fully, if you give it is better, लेकिन अगर पूरा नहीं दे सकते हो एटलीस्ट ये पांच चीजें तो बिल्कुल देनी ही है। जीएसटी ऑफ द सप्लायर रिसीवर, डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ द गुड्स, टोटल वैल्यू, अमाउंट टैक्स चार्ज एंड प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई। नाउ HSN फ्रॉम 1 अप्रैल 2021 आपके इनवॉइस में आपको HSN कोड लिखना जरूरी है। HSN कोड का साइज है 8 नंबर्स का। देयर इज HSN कोड विच इज ऑफ 8 नंबर्स, but you may not be in a position to put all the 8 numbers. So if your turnover is just up to 5 crores, then you're a small taxpayer. Up to 5 crores, if your turnover is there, that is your annual turnover in the preceding financial year is up to 5 crores, then you mention 4 digits of the HSN code. For only B2B supplies, B2C not required, it is optional. But if you're a big supplier wherein your the annual turnover is crossing 5 crores, then आप 6 डिजिट तक दे सकते हो। HSN कितने HSN is how many digits? 8 digits. But they are saying अगर आप 8 नहीं 8 देते हो तो बेस्ट है। If you can give 8 digits, nothing like it. But if you cannot give 8 digits, give 4 digits if your turnover is less than 5 crores. And if your digits, if you're more than 5 crores, then you have to give 6 digits. How we know HSN for every goods? दिखाता हूं मैं वो भी आपको। जो HSN है वो हम बोरो कर रहे हैं कस्टम से, क्योंकि ये HSN जो है कस्टम्स में रहता है। ठीक है, कस्टम्स का आप HSN नोट देखोगे तो आप देखोगे करीबन 10,000 से भी ज्यादा प्रोडक्ट है, तो वहां से आपको HSN कोड उठाना पड़ेगा। लेकिन वो कोड से लेके आपको जीएसटी रेट शेड्यूल में रेट देखना पड़ेगा। नाउ व्हाट इज दिस रेट शेड्यूल? आई विल शो यू दिस। This is notification number 1 of 2017 which says, ओके इसको बाद में इतने सारे अमेंडमेंट्स हुए हैं, सेज दैट यहाँ पे हमने 5, 6, 7 शेड्यूल दिए हैं। जो प्रोडक्ट जिस शेड्यूल में फिट होता है उसको उठाइए और रेस्पेक्टिव टैक्स रेट डालिए। सो इफ आपका गुड शेड्यूल 1 में है तो फिर 2.5%, शेड्यूल 2 में है तो 6% वैसा है। इस शेड्यूल के अंदर देखिए यहाँ पे 4 डिजिट का HSN कोड दिया गया है। तो अगर आपके गुड्स इस HSN कोड में है और इस डिस्क्रिप्शन को मैच करते हैं, ठीक है, दोनों होना चाहिए, द HSN एंड द डिस्क्रिप्शन, फिर आप क्या करोगे? अगर ऑल गुड्स लिखा है तो फिर ऑल द गुड्स अंडर दिस HSN। थोड़ी जगह HSN दिया है और स्पेसिफिक डिस्क्रिप्शन दिया है तो फिर ओनली दैट प्रोडक्ट्स विल गेट कवर्ड। Okay, so these products which are given against the HSN, that is how you will get to know what is the GST rate for your product. So very important, you have to see the code and the description. HSN कोड सिर्फ गुड्स पे होता है, यस सिर्फ गुड्स पे होता है। और सर्विसेज के लिए सर्विस अकाउंटिंग कोड SAC, HSN गुड्स के लिए और सर्विसेज के लिए SAC कोड होता है। कितने कॉपीज देने पड़ेंगे इनवॉइस के? इनवॉइस अगर आप सप्लाई ऑफ गुड्स करते हो तो 3 कॉपी, एक ओरिजिनल आपके लिए, एक डुप्लीकेट ट्रांसपोर्टर के लिए, और एक ट्रिप्लीकेट रिसीवर के लिए। सॉरी, ओरिजिनल रिसीवर के लिए है, एक ट्रांसपोर्टर के लिए है, और ट्रिप्लीकेट जो है आपके लिए। रिसिपिएंट, ट्रांसपोर्टर और सप्लायर। लेकिन सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विस में ट्रांसपोर्टर तो इन्वॉल्व नहीं होगा, तो इसलिए सिर्फ 2 कॉपी जरूरी है, ओरिजिनल फॉर द रिसिपिएंट एंड डुप्लीकेट फॉर द सप्लायर। If there is no transporter, still then 2 copies are sufficient. If there is no transporter involved, but how will you move the goods then? Transporter is not involved, but it has to get transported, right? In that case, how will the goods move? You might be using your own transportation, or the receiver may send someone any of his transporter. In either case, you will have to have someone is coming to the place for purchasing, then fine, then 2 copies are sufficient. और अगर कोई सप्लायर बहुत आइटम्स में डील करता है तो they manage HSN for every goods, and if some goods HSN not available or no, find them. Definitely जो जितना बड़ा होगा उससे ज्यादा काम होगा, करेक्ट? सो जितना भी बड़ा हो, जितने भी गुड्स डील करते हो, उसको हर प्रोडक्ट के HSN पता होने चाहिए। तो इसीलिए क्या करते हैं, मैन्युअली एक एक चेक नहीं कर सकता है, वो कंप्यूटर में फीड कर देते हैं ये गुड्स का ये HSN नंबर। जैसे टैली में आप रेज करोगे इनवॉइस, तो आप गुड्स का डिस्क्रिप्शन डालोगे और उसके प्रिंट निकालोगे तो HSN आ जाएगा। सो इट्स अ वन टाइम एक्टिविटी, आपको हैरानी की होने की जरूरत नहीं है कि इतने सारे गुड्स है, मैं कौन सा HSN डालूं। आप जितने गुड्स में डील करते हो सिर्फ उसके HSN डालिए। नो नो, HSN यू डोंट हैव टू रिमेम्बर, इसीलिए हमने HSN कुछ कवर ही नहीं किया है। ना तो आपको इंटर में याद रखना है, ना तो फाइनल में। HSN यू डोंट हैव टू रिमेम्बर, जस्ट बिकॉज यू आस्क्ड आई हैव shown you the HSN. Only how many digits of HSN is required that you have to remember. ठीक है? नेक्स्ट इज रिवाइज टैक्स इनवॉइस। एक बार इनवॉइस रेस किया, उसमें गलती हो गई, क्या मैं रिवाइज टैक्स इनवॉइस कर सकता हूं? ट्रिप्लीकेट मतलब 3 कॉपीज। ट्रिप्लीकेट मीन्स, डुप्लीकेट मीन्स सेकेंड कॉपी, ट्रिप्लीकेट मीन्स थर्ड कॉपी। Yeah. Now you come to my question and answer this, that I have raised an invoice. Can I normally HSN 8 digits? Yes, yes, Soumya. In the customs classification, what we'll see there, it is 8 digits only. GST, for the purpose of classification, they have adopted 4 digits or 6 digits in some cases. Yeah. I've raised an invoice. I've found some mistake. Can I issue a revised tax invoice? Yes, you can. Okay. Chauhan is saying no. Yes, but only in some cases. What is those some cases, Goldie? Chauhan Tej Prakash is saying, no, no, you cannot raise, sir. If you raise an invoice, then somewhere I have seen that there is debit note and credit note. What is the use of that? So, in case of invoice which is raised, then you cannot raise a revised invoice, is what he's saying. Correct. So, what Tej Prakash and what Dev Mitra is saying is correct, that only when you want to revise the invoice, you cannot revise the invoice. If there is any adjustment which has to be done, you will raise a debit note and credit note. So then what is this topic of revised tax invoice we are talking? We are talking of revised tax invoice in a particular situation where the registered person who has been granted registration with effect from a early date, earlier than the date of issuance of certificate of registration, because he's applied early, now he's got the registration late. Then during that period, whatever he is supplied, only those invoices can be revised. So only in one situation, revised tax invoice is possible. That is on the birthday of the taxable person. Before that, he was not a registered person. Now he's become, by his birth in GST, he's become, got a certificate of registration. He's got a GST IN number, and any supply which is made from the date of application till the date of issue of registration certificate, for that duration, whatever is supplied, he can raise a revised tax invoice. Okay. So as we are saying, such invoices shall be issued against the commercial invoices which is already issued during such period. Revised tax invoice should be issued within a duration of 1 month from the date of issuance of registration certificate. पुराने जो भी है उसको आप 1 महीने के अंदर रिवाइज करके दे सकते हो. A registered person may issue a consolidated revised tax invoice if the recipient is unregistered. तो आपको हर एक इनवॉइस 10 रुपए 20 रुपए या जो भी अनरजिस्टर्ड को आप सप्लाई कर रहे हो उसको रिवाइज करने की जरूरत नहीं. उन सबको मिला के एक कंसोलिडेटेड कर सकते हो only for the revised invoice. And in case of interstate supplies, a consolidated revised tax invoice cannot be issued in respect of all unregistered person if the value exceeds 2,50,000 rupees. क्योंकि up to 2,50,000 we know we can consolidate. About 2,50,000 आपको individual invoices देने पड़ेंगे. So only in one situation revised tax invoice is possible in the case of certificate of registration. Now non-issuance of tax invoice. In following cases, you don't have to issue a tax invoice where the value of the goods is less than 200 rupees, recipient is unregistered, and recipient does not demand. If the recipient demands, you have to raise. And for all of these, whatever small sales you're making, you can raise a consolidated tax invoice in a day. No problem. You can raise a consolidated tax invoice. मीनिंग ऑफ बी टू सी, जब आप अनरजिस्टर्ड कस्टमर को देते हो उसे कहते हैं बी टू सी. बी टू बी मतलब आप भी रजिस्टर्ड हो, बिजनेस भी रजिस्टर्ड है, कस्टमर भी रजिस्टर्ड है, वो हो जाएगा बी टू बी. और जब कस्टमर अनरजिस्टर्ड है उसे कहते हैं बी टू सी. करेक्ट. कंसोलिडेटेड इज ओनली इन केस ऑफ अनरजिस्टर्ड रिसिपिएंट. राइट. Bill of supply, as we had said, a registered person who is supplying exempted goods or services or one who is paying tax under composition levy, he will give a bill of supply. इसके content ऐसे है, same like a tax invoice, name, address, GST of the supplier, continuous serial number, date of issue, recipient, tax नहीं रहेगा because you're not charging any tax. All other details are same. करेक्ट. रिवाइज्ड टैक्स इनवॉइस किसके लिए इशू होता है? रिवाइज टैक्स इनवॉइस सप्लायर का रिटर्न भी फाइल करना पड़ेगा ना उसको, रजिस्ट्रेशन. तो रजिस्ट्रेशन जब से उसको मिला है तब उसको जीएसटी रिटर्न्स फाइल करना पड़ेगा. जीएसटी रिटर्न्स फाइल करने में इनवॉइस नंबर्स देना पड़ेगा, इसीलिए वो रिवाइज करता है. दैट इज वन रीजन. सेकेंड रीजन इज दैट यस रिसिपेंट को क्रेडिट चाहिए. फॉर दैट रीजन ऑल्सो he will claim the credit. That is for that reason also he will raise a revised invoice. For both the reasons it will get satisfied. Any more doubt? Okay, so we'll take a break of 10 minutes and we'll catch again. Can we continue? Okay, so there is a question. Agar supplier is unregistered and he crosses the limit. Your question is not clear, Tej Prakash. Can you unmute and ask a question?
हेलो सर।
Yes.
सर, मेरा डाउट ये है कि अगर एक सप्लायर है वो 1 जनवरी को लायबल था रजिस्ट्रेशन के लिए और उसने
आवाज
15
नहीं आ रही
जनवरी
है.
को हेलो,
Yeah.
एम आई ऑडिबल सर?
Yeah, now it's better.
सर, अगर एक सप्लायर है वो 1 जनवरी से लायबल था और 15 जनवरी को उसने अप्लाई किया और 1 फरवरी को रजिस्ट्रेशन ग्रांट हुआ, तो वो लायबल 1 जनवरी से था, तो उसको 1 जनवरी के 1 फरवरी तक इनवॉइस रेज करने थे। तो पहले उसने विदाउट जीएसटी किए, तो बाद में जब वो रिवाइज टैक्स इनवॉइस करेगा तो वो पुराने कस्टमर से जीएसटी क्लेम कर पाएगा वो?
हाँ, वो जो भी रिवाइज इनवॉइस रेज करेगा, सप्लायर कस्टमर्स के जीएसटी नंबर डाल के रिवाइज करेगा, तो फिर रिसिपेंट आईटीसी क्लेम कर सकते हैं.
और जीएसटी भरना पड़ेगा उस पे पुराने इनवॉइस पे?
हाँ, डेफिनेटली.
ओके, अंडरस्टूड, थैंक यू सर।
Okay. So next is on this bill of supply. As we understood, when you're supplying exempted goods or services or paying tax under composition scheme, you will give a bill of supply. The details required is more or less same like a normal tax invoice. Now, if you're supplying both exempted and taxable goods, then what you'll do, you will give a document called as invoice come bill of supply when supplying both to a unregistered person. Okay. If you have if you are registered and you're supplying taxable and non-taxable goods, then you will issue a invoice come bill of supply. The next document is receipt voucher, that if you're receiving any money in advance, right, that time you cannot issue an invoice. Invoice has to be issued when you supply something. But here you're not supplying something, but you have received money in advance. For that, you should issue a document called as a receipt voucher. Which receipt voucher only gives the other person information that you have received the money. Now, whether GST has to be paid on that, it depends whether it is supply of goods, then no GST on receipt of advance. But if you are a service provider, then you have to pay GST on receipt of advance also. So you have to issue a receipt voucher irrespective of whether GST is charged or not, because it will just have the details of everything other than the taxes. So it will have the name, address, and GSTN of the supplier. It will have the consecutive serial number. It will have date of issue, receipt if the recipient is registered, his GSTN details, description of goods and services, amount of advance which is taken, rate of tax, amount of tax charged in respect of taxable goods or supplies, saying that when you will raise the invoice, what will be the tax rate, what is the place of supply, whether the tax is payable under RCM, and of course signature. So these are the information which is required for a receipt voucher. But for services, if the receipt voucher is issued, then it will have the tax charge on advance. Correct. That's why you have this column of mentioning that what is the rate of tax and amount of tax charged, because on your advance also you will collect the GST. That's the reason you will include this. Now, what happens when at the time of receipt, you do not know what you are supplying, what is the taxable rate for it, and you don't know whether you will do a interstate supply or intrastate supply. So whenever you are in doubt, but you have received advance and you have to tax charge the GST, in that case, what you will do, if your rate of tax is not determinable. That is, you're not, if you know for sure that you're supplying goods, then you will not charge tax. But if you do not know whether it is goods or services, also, or within services, you don't know what kind of services, then you will charge a standard rate. Then what will be the standard rate? Tax will be paid at the rate of 18%. And what is the nature of supply? You're not very sure if it is interstate or intrastate. In that case, by default, you will charge interstate supply. So you will charge IGST. So the standard rate will be 18%, and the standard nature of transaction will be an interstate supply. Nidhi, need guidance on illustration 2. Okay, can you just tell me the page number? Yeah. So when you give any vouchers, right, you're giving a voucher or you're getting advance, and you have a FMCG store wherein you're supplying products which is chargeable at 5%, chargeable at 12%, and chargeable at 18% also. So when there is a assorted or a mixed kind of a supply range which you have, and you're not able to ascertain the tax rate, in such scenarios, this will be applicable. Page number 10.36. Okay. $18 and enter only in services, not done only in goods. Correct. Because in goods, we don't have to collect GST on receipt of advance. So in case of goods, we will not do it. 10.36 is illustration 1. Okay, 10.36. Are you talking about, I'll just share you. Are you talking about this illustration? Right. So Jain and Sons is a trader dealing in stationery item. It is registered under GST and has undertaken following sales during the day. Recipient of supply is Raghav Traders. He's a registered retail dealer, 190 rupees. Dhruv Enterprises, an unregistered trader, 358 rupees. Gaurav, a painter, is unregistered, 500 rupees. Oberoi Orphanage, an unregistered entity, 188. Aradhya, a student, is unregistered, 158. None of the recipients require a tax invoice. Raghav Traders being a composition dealer. So determine in respect of the which of the above supplies Jain and company may issue a consolidated tax invoice. So we have told that wherever the value is rupees less than 200 rupees to an unregistered person, there we can consolidate the invoice. Here, even though Raghav Traders, who is the only person who is registered, okay, although the value of the goods is less than 200, since he is registered, so this cannot be consolidated. The consolidated can be consolidated for two conditions. The value should be less than 200 and it should be unregistered person. So in case of Raghav Traders, he will issue a separate invoice. And in case of these two traders who are unregistered and the value is less than 200, there it will be consolidated. For these 358 and 500, individual invoices has to be raised. Clear? हाँ निधि, व्हाट इज योर डाउट?
सर इसमें अलग अलग लोग मतलब क्या कैसे मतलब क्लैरिफाई करेंगे कि ये रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन कंसोलिडेट में है या नहीं?
यहाँ पे क्वेश्चन में दिया गया है ना, राघव ट्रेडर्स इज अ रजिस्टर्ड रिटेल डीलर,
जी
तो वो रजिस्टर्ड है, बाकी सब अनरजिस्टर्ड 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 ही है।
यस सर। सर जो रजिस्टर्ड होगा वही कंसोलिडेट में आएगा, लेस देन 20।
अनरजिस्टर्ड है वही कंसोलिडेट में आएगा, रजिस्टर्ड कंसोलिडेटेड में नहीं आएगा,
ओके सर।
क्योंकि रजिस्टर्ड का आप कंसोलिडेट करेगा तो क्रेडिट कैसे क्लेम करेगा, नहीं कर पाएगा। सो रजिस्टर्ड के लिए आपको इंडिविजुअल इनवॉइस देना पड़ेगा, कंसोलिडेटेड नहीं कर सकते। अनरजिस्टर्ड का आप कंसोलिडेट कर सकते हैं अगर वैल्यू लेस देन 200 है। इसमें 358 और 500 कंसोलिडेटेड नहीं कर सकते क्योंकि ये वैल्यू मोर देन 200
लेस देन, जी सर, क्लियर सर।
Good evening, sir. Sir, I have a doubt in illustration 2. It's written that none of the recipients require a tax invoice. Then also we'll issue a normal tax invoice to the to Raghav Traders. It does not
Correct.
matter if he's a how will it make a difference if he's a composition dealer?
Correct. If he's registered, we have to give him an invoice. Whether he's composition or no doesn't matter, since composition person is also treated as a registered person.
But sir, if the supplier is a composition is coming under the composition scheme, so he will give a bill of supply instead of the tax invoice.
Correct.
Had Jain and Sons be would have been a composition dealer, then he had issued a bill of supply, right?
Correct. Correct.
All right.
If it is both taxable and non-taxable, then we had said no, Chauhan, that it will be invoice come bill of supply. Consolidated issue raise करेंगे. Okay. So this is the case of where the rate is not determinable. Then you have refund voucher, whatever amount you have received. So he will pay the advance, recipient pays the advance, he will give the receipt voucher. But then the supply has not taken place. So there is no supply transaction, neither a tax invoice. Recipient is saying, okay, I will not buy goods from you. So you return back the money. So for that, we will have a refund voucher. So these are all the legal documents which you have to issue, and the law specifies that it has to be issued. When you receive advance, have a receipt voucher. When you're refunding the money, issue a refund voucher. Invoice and payment voucher. A registered person who is liable to pay tax under reverse charge shall issue the payment voucher whenever you're buying some goods from a person or taking services from somebody who is not registered and on which you have to pay reverse charge basis GST. There you will give a payment voucher. So in that case, you will give a payment voucher at the time of making payment to the supplier. And for reverse charge, you will also raise an invoice. Correct? You will raise an invoice and give a payment voucher. Now, when you buy from unregistered person, that will come under 9.4. And 9.4 says that only in one scenario you have to pay GST when you buy from an unregistered person. Now, what is that scenario? That scenario is when you're buying from a builder. A builder is having a concessional rate of 5%. Okay. But the condition is he cannot claim any input tax credit. But the condition again is he cannot claim the input tax credit. However, all his purchases should at least 80% of it should be from registered person. He must purchase at least minimum of 80% from registered person. And if there is a shortage, then he will have to pay reverse charge. So for that scenario, only in that scenario, a person who is buying from an unregistered person will pay the GST under reverse charge under 9.4. All other cases of 9.3 are separate. So when is this payment voucher required? When recipient is registered, receives the supplies taxable on reverse charge basis either under 9.3 or 9.4. If supplier is registered or supplier is unregistered, and in 9.4 when the only supplier is unregistered, because if supplier is registered, he will charge the GST under 9.4. Receiver need not pay the reverse charge. So in all these scenarios, the recipient will issue a payment voucher. So for builder concessional rate of 5%, yes. So if you buy any house or any apartment, the GST rate is not 18%, the rate will be 5%. So if any apartment you're buying today, the rate is 5%, and concessional rate, if your house is less than 60 square meter and the value is less than 45 lakhs, then he will charge only 1%. Invoice, again, where the supplier is unregistered, their recipient will issue the invoice. If the supplier is registered, he will not issue the invoice. Just see this chart. Is there any query in this? This is a very important aspect to understand. Can you explain refund voucher again? Yes. So you have given me an advance saying that I have to supply some goods to you, or I have to provide some services to you. But after 15 days, when I'm ready to supply, you're saying, no, I don't need the service. I've already got the service myself. Now you refund the money back. So for that refund, I will refund the money and give a document called refund voucher. Payment voucher, who issues? Payment voucher will be issued by the recipient itself, because recipient is paying to the supplier, so he will issue a payment voucher. Receipt voucher on advance. Correct. Receipt voucher is on advance. Clear with this chart? When the recipient is registered and he receives supply, which is taxable on reverse charge basis. Now, reverse charge basis can be under 9.3 or 9.4, and under 9.3, supplier is registered or supplier is unregistered. In both the cases, he will pay the reverse charge. Correct? And 9.4, he will pay the reverse charge only when the supplier is unregistered. That is, then in all these three scenarios, he'll give a payment voucher. But invoice he will raise only when the supplier is unregistered. If the supplier is registered, he will raise the invoice. He will not charge the tax. Recipient will pay under reverse charge. Sir, we can say that in all cases of RCM, recipient issues payment voucher. Correct. When supplier is unregistered, then recipient issues both invoice and payment vouchers. Exactly right. Very correct. Speak. You have analyzed it correctly. 9394 charge of GST chapter में हमने बताया था चौहान. I will tell again. 93 says that ये कैटेगरी ऑफ सर्विसेज है, इसके ऊपर आपको रिवर्स चार्ज पे करना है. वेदर सप्लायर रजिस्टर्ड अनरजिस्टर्ड डजंट मैटर, रिसीवर को रिवर्स चार्ज पे करना है. लेकिन 94 बोलता है कि इफ यू आर बाइंग फ्रॉम दिस कैटेगरी ऑफ पीपल and if the supplier is unregistered, only then you have to pay the reverse charge. वो 94 बोलता है. So 93 बोलता है कि सप्लायर रजिस्टर्ड हो या अनरजिस्टर्ड, ये जो कैटेगरी के है, वो जो नोटिफिकेशन हमने पढ़ा है, नोटिफिकेशन नंबर 12 of 2017, that you have to pay reverse charge. That is 93. लेकिन 94 बोलता है if the buyer is of a specific category, जैसे बायर प्रमोटर है, बिल्डिंग बनाने वाला है, बिल्डर प्रमोटर है, उसे रिवर्स चार्ज पे करना ही पड़ेगा अगर वो अनरजिस्टर्ड सप्लायर से खरीदता है तो. गॉट इट? Yes, you have to remember 93 and 94 fully. चार्ज का पूरा एक चैप्टर उसके लिए ही है. टैक्स इनवॉइस हमने कहा है, कुछ कंपनीज या कुछ इंडस्ट्रीज होते हैं जहां पे टैक्स इनवॉइस इश्यू नहीं करते हैं. जैसे इंश्योरेंस कंपनी है, वो इनवॉइस रेज नहीं करेंगे. जीटीए है, वो आपको कंसाइनमेंट नोट करेगा. पैसेंजर ट्रांसपोर्ट है, वो टिकट देंगे. एडमिशन ऑफ सिनेमैटिक, जब आप मूवी जाते हो तब आपको इनवॉइस नहीं मिलता, टिकट मिलता है. सो in specific industries, what are the alternative documents which is issued, that is also treated as a tax invoice. Sir, in case of supplier is unregistered, then recipient have to issue invoice and payment voucher right under RCM. Correct. What is the difference between invoice and payment voucher? Invoice is a document which is the basis where tax is charged and ITC is claimed. And payment voucher is for the payment for that invoice, and it is not a document for claiming the ITC. It is a document to evidence that payment is made, and that will help in determining the date when RCM is payable. Delivery challan. Delivery challan, when you supply liquid gas, when the quantity at the time of removal is not known, right? Because it will get known when you deliver it. Transportation of goods for job worker, transportation of goods for any reason other than by way of supply, and any supply which may be notified by the board. In such situations, you will issue a delivery challan. So this covers it all. That is, when you're transporting goods for any reason other than supply, it will all get covered under delivery challan transaction. Delivery challan contents is fine. If you're supplying any goods in CKD or SKD, SKD means semi knocked down or completely knocked down. जब एक बड़ा सा लिफ्ट बेचते हो आप, and you cannot give the complete lift, you have to give it in part. So it is semi knocked down. थोड़े पार्ट्स हैं, थोड़े खुले हैं, वहां पे जाके assemble करो. Completely knocked down, when nothing is assembled, everything will have to get assembled there. That is called completely knocked down. So when the supplier issues the invoice, he will issue the invoice, shall issue the complete invoice before dispatch of the first consignment. Then supplier will issue a delivery challan for each. He will first raise the invoice for each lorry, because each of these products are not going in one vehicle. It is going in multiple vehicles. each vehicle के साथ that invoice and the delivery challan will get attached, and then copies of all the delivery challan shall accompany with the should be duly certified invoice. Then the original invoice will be sent along with the last consignment, so that there is no leakage of revenue. That is the reason. Raise the invoice in advance, but give a copy of it with all the vehicles. When the last vehicle is being shipped, with that last vehicle, this invoice, that original invoice, will be sent. Now, in case of jewelry or artwork, you have to carry, because you do not know how much you will supply. So you carry the delivery challan with you. Once you supply it over there, then raise an invoice. So that's why raise a delivery challan, how much ever is sold, balance when you're coming back, then raise a delivery challan for the remaining goods. Because this is called as line sales, or when a sales is made by one person, he's carrying the goods and selling it to various shopkeepers. He's registered. Now he will have to charge IGST, but he doesn't know what will be the value of supply. So he will carry the invoice along with him. For movement of goods, control has to happen. So a delivery challan will be raised. Now on the aspect of credit note and debit note. Okay. Any doubts till now? Because these documents were all simple. So we have just rushed through fast. E-invoicing is left. Yes, I'm aware of it. Delivery challan is like documents of title, documents of movement. Because title, delivery challan will not give. Delivery challan only gives a right to move the goods. It is not a title document. Sir, in case of SKD, CKD, invoice for complete product is raised. As you said, delivery challan for each item should be sent. And where can revenue get leaked if it's not in this way? You will, if you do not do it, that you don't raise an invoice, then what will happen is two consignments, I can put it in two lifts, two products, I can put it in one consignment and send it. One without bill, one with bill. So how will be the control? Subsequent to delivery challan, invoice has to be issued. Yes. If the movement of goods is happening, say for a job worker, you will give a delivery challan, he will send it back. So their invoice will not be raised. The job worker will raise the invoice only for his job working charges. But if you're doing a branch transfer, there you will raise a delivery challan and an invoice. In this invoice, in this case of CKD or SKD, you will raise a delivery challan and an invoice. So based on each situation, it has to be seen whether all the delivery challan will get converted or not. Yes, Somesh Singh. What is CKD or SKD? CKD means completely knocked out. You have to do a project, but the parts are available. It has to get assembled there. So you have completely knocked down parts. And SKD is semi knocked down. You have constructed the bigger parts, but smaller parts are all there. It has to go and get attached to it. You have to do an assembly of a bigger parts with the smaller parts. That is called semi knockdown. CKD is completely knocked down. Right to movement in case of delivery challan, I'm not able to understand. So with the delivery challan, you can move the goods. Generally, any movement will be with invoice, correct? But in situations where it is not a supply, there you will not raise an invoice. But if the officer asks you, why are you moving the goods? You will say it is for not supply. Then he will tell, I don't know whether it is supply or not supply. You have not paid the GST. So there, for such situations, you will raise a delivery challan, and that delivery challan will be useful. What will the insurance or banking company do instead of no, they will raise the tax invoice itself. It is only that timing. Okay. We are saying that when alternative document is issued, like a banking company, instead of issuing a tax invoice at the month end, they will give the document of the charges. Or an insurance company gives the insurance policy, in that itself it will mention. So those are the alternative documents which they give. Okay. Credit note, we know this, where one or more tax invoice have been issued for supply of any goods or services, and the supplier has erroneously declared a value which is more than the actual value. You were supposed to charge 1 lakh rupees, you have charged 80,000 rupees. Okay. You have declared a value which is more than the actual value. Sorry, 80,000 you are supposed to charge, you have charged 1 lakh rupees. 20,000 extra charge kiya hai. So you have to bring that down. And as we had all discussed, revision of invoice is not possible except that birthday person, whenever he's first born in the GST, only he can issue a revised invoice. Others cannot issue a revised invoice. So what he will do, वैल्यू आपने 1 लाख चार्ज किया, अब कस्टमर चिल्ला रहा है कि भाई 80,000 चार्ज करना था, आपने 1 लाख चार्ज कर दिया, इनवॉइस को फाड़ के नया बनाऊं? नो, क्योंकि सप्लाई तो हो चुका है, वैल्यू में करेक्शंस करनी है. सो इन दैट केस फॉर द 20,000 रुपीज डिफरेंस, 1 लाख किया है, 20,000 में तुमको क्रेडिट नोट रेज कर दूंगा. सो इन दैट केस 20,000 for the value of the differential of what you have charged and what you should charge for the 20,000, you will raise a credit note. And second situation, when the supplier has erroneously declared a higher rate of tax, 80,000 ही है, लेकिन I should have charged 12%, I have charged 18%. So balance 6% के लिए भी मैं credit note raise कर सकता हूँ. Or when I've supplied everything correctly, the quantity had mentioned 20, receiver has received only 18. तो फिर 2 के लिए I will raise a credit note. Last situation, where the quality of the goods or services supplied is not to the satisfaction of the recipient, thereby necessitating a partial or total reimbursement. In that case, also I can raise a credit note. Only in this 4 scenarios, I can raise a credit note. Apart from this, you cannot raise any credit note, and credit note will always be raised by the supplier. Recipient cannot raise it. A credit note and a debit note has to be raised from the supplier. In our accounting, we have seen a credit note is raised, corresponding debit note is raised. That is not the scenario in GST. Every debit note should be accompanied with a credit note, and every credit note should be accompanied with a debit note is in accounting. But in GST law, if there is a reduction in value, then credit note is issued, and it is always issued by the supplier. And when you have to give discount also, we know that the conditions of credit note is there. When you have to give a discount also, you will raise a credit note, but credit note will not be allowed for secondary discount. For other discounts, it will be raised. How the ITC flows in front of credit note? Very good. So I've raised an invoice for that 1 lakh rupees. Recipient has claimed the credit for full 1 lakh rupees because invoice aate hi, I have uploaded in my GSTR1, in his GSTR2B, he's got 1 lakh rupees. Now he should not have claimed 1 lakh. He should have claimed only on 80,000 rupees. For the 20,000 credit note, what I've raised, he should reverse the credit because he is eligible for credit for what? Only 80,000 rupees. So 20,000 rupees ke upar credit he has to reverse. And in my turnover also I have to reduce the 20,000 rupees. Then that will match. So it is opposite side. When I raise an invoice, ITC is claimed. When I reduce the invoice, I will pay less taxes. He should also reverse the credit. So the invoice value plus करने के लिए debit note and invoice value minus करने के लिए credit note. Exactly right. Last point, Soumya, when the quality of the goods I have supplied is not satisfied the recipient, then I have to give him reimbursement because मैंने तो अच्छे क्वालिटी का माल बेचा था, but he is not satisfied. So I will tell I can give you a discount. Now that discount or the reduction in sale value will be through a credit note. Correct. Credit note will result in a reduction in ITC. सेकेंडरी डिस्काउंट के लिए क्या करेंगे? आप कमर्शियल क्रेडिट नोट रेस करेंगे, जीएसटी क्रेडिट नोट रेस नहीं कर सकते बिकॉज आईटीसी और जीएसटी इफेक्ट नहीं होगा फॉर अ सेकेंडरी डिस्काउंट. हाउ डू वी रिवर्स द क्रेडिट? इन द रिटर्न you have an option of reversal. There you will reverse the credit. Now debit note, opposite of credit note, value you have charged 80,000 but it had to be 1 lakh rupees. The value increase ho gaya. The supplier erroneously declared a value which is less than the actual value. There you will raise a debit note. Again, lower rate of tax, you were supposed to charge 28%, but you have charged only 5%. So government के खाते में कितना जाना है? 28 minus 5, 23%. So where the supplier has erroneously declared a lower rate, which is applicable for the kind of goods, for that also you can raise a debit note. Wherever the value has to get enhanced and the tax has to get enhanced, there you will raise a debit note. Third, when the quantity received by the recipient is more than what has been declared in the tax invoice. Tax invoice में मैंने 15 quantities लिखा है. The delivery boy who has packed the goods, he is instead of 1, he is read it as 2. So 15 की जगह 25 goods बेच दिया है. So I am telling the recipient, give me back. He's saying I will not give it back. So for that differential 10 quantities, I will raise a debit note. How to adjust credit and debit note against original invoice? You cannot adjust it. So in the returns, you will adjust. And in your books of accounts, you can adjust it by giving the reference number of the invoice number. And you call a debit note or you call a supplementary invoice, it is one and the same because you are increasing the value in a debit note as well as in a supplementary invoice. Now, time limit for credit note. The time limit within which you can issue a credit note is 30th November following the end of the financial year in which such supply was made, or the date of furnishing annual return, whichever is earlier. You can raise a credit note within this time limit, not beyond that. So the time limit is actually when the thing pays, but the reporting in the return is this date. It says that any registered person who issues a credit note shall declare the details in the returns by the 30th November or the financial year end of the or before the date of furnishing annual return, whichever is earlier. But the time limit for debit note, there's no time limit because government is getting revenue in case of debit note. So they will tell anytime you find the mistake, you pay us the tax. They will not fix any time because for a credit note, what is happening? The government is reducing the revenue. I have supplied for 1 lakh. Now I'm saying I will reduce it by 20,000 rupees. So it's a loss to the government. So there is a time limit for credit note, but there's no time limit for debit note. Correct. Debit note will increase the tax liability of the supplier, and it will increase the input tax credit for the receiver. Adjustment in annual return or monthly, it is preferred to do the adjustment in the monthly return itself. 9394 30 days limit is applicable from 1st November 2024. What is this 30 days time limit? To claim the credit, right? Yes, that is applicable from 1st November 2024. Correct. You have to issue the invoice within 30 days. Monthly returns for the month in which credit or debit note is issued. Correct. गवर्नमेंट उसका रेवेन्यू बढ़ा है तब कुछ नहीं बोलती, लेकिन जब रेवेन्यू कम होता है तो रेस्ट्रिक्शन डाल देती है. करेक्ट. कैन यू गिव एन एग्जांपल ऑफ फॉर टाइमिंग ऑफ क्रेडिट नोट? मीन्स व्हाट? See, I've supplied goods to you on the 31st of May. Okay. Now you have saying that they are not happy with the thing and I have to raise a credit note. So when will I raise the credit note? For the supply what I've made, I have to raise a credit note. Now this credit note, I can raise it any point of time, because when I get to know that you have got a defect in the product, I will raise a credit note. So say on the 30th June, I raise a credit note. So once I raise the credit note on 30th of June, then the reporting of this credit note has to happen on a timely basis, because my GST is getting reduced. So this reporting what I've raised on 30th of June of 2025, 30th June 2025 credit note has to be reported in my GST return by the 30th November 2026, or the annual return for 25-26, which is filed, whichever is earlier. Great. So timing of credit note, then tax collection and mentioning. What it says is there is a prohibition on unauthorized collection of tax. You cannot collect a tax without any authority, which means except the provisions of the law, you cannot collect anything called as tax. So if the rate is 18%, you cannot collect 20%. You can collect only 18%. And an unregistered person cannot collect the tax. and amount of tax should be indicated in the tax invoice in other documents. That is what section 33 is saying. Sir, is this not the time limit for issuance of credit note? No, this time limit is for reporting of the credit note. That is what I had said, that credit note can be raised at any point of time. I will show you the relevant provisions of the Act, which says that any registered person who issues a credit note in relation to supply of goods or services or both shall declare the details of such credit note in the return for the month during which such credit note has been raised, but not later than 30th day of November following the end of the financial year in which such supply was made. So when I make a supply and I should raise, sorry, what you're saying is correct, Ishan, that when I make a supply from the supply within 30th day of November, from that financial year, I should raise a credit note, not the reporting. Yes, they are talking about reporting also. You have to declare the details, but that credit note cannot be beyond the 30th day of November following the end of the financial year in which such supply was made. So if I make a supply in, again, with going with the same example, if I make a supply on the 3rd of June, I can raise a credit note for that by the 30th day of November or return filing, whichever is earlier. Thanks for correcting there. That credit note has to be raised by the 30th day of November from the date of supply. So there is a time limit for issuance of credit note itself. Okay. Next is on e-invoicing part. E-invoicing is basically saying what we'll do is we'll go through the pictorial representation, what is there in our study material. But before that, let us understand basic, saying that when was e-invoice required? Each person is doing the reporting separately and the transactions are getting reported after the month end when the return is filed. By that time, lot of things are getting missing out. So that is the reason what they will do is they will report the invoice once it is raised. So on 30th November of financial year 25-26 or 24-25, if 3rd June 25 is the credit note. So if the credit note is on the 3rd June 2025, right? So you are falling under the financial year 25-26. So it will be 30th November 2026, within which you can raise the credit note. Okay. Which year's annual return? Annual return for 25-26 itself. So you are in the, you have made a supply in 25-26. So annual return of 25-26 has to be considered. So basically 30th November of the next financial year. Correct. Okay. Now come back to e-invoicing, where invoice is generated by each software may look. So does e-invoicing means electronic invoice? No, it doesn't mean electronic invoice. It means the invoice, what you're raising, you raise it, and then you do the reporting of that invoice in a separate portal called e-invoicing portal. That is e-invoicing. The important aspect is that once you raise a e-invoice, then you don't have to report it in the portal itself, because once you raise an invoice, e-invoice, the details are already there. That will get auto-populated on your GSTR1, and your e-way bill also will get updated. Now, whom is this applicable to? All registered person with an aggregate turnover which is crossing 500 crores in any of the years from 2017-18. So that got gradually reduced from 500 crores, it got reduced to 100 crores, then 50 crores and 10 crores. So from 1st October 2022, if if any taxable person whose turnover was just 10 crores in any financial year, in other situations we saw any turnover in the previous financial year, but for e-invoicing in any of the financial year, if your turnover crosses 10 crores, you have to raise a e-invoice. Say in 2017-18, your turnover was 50 crores. Gradually, it got reduced to 2 crores and 3 crores. Still, you will be required to raise a e-invoice, because in any one of the financial years also, if your turnover was crossing 10 crores, from 1st October 22, you have to raise a e-invoice. Now, this is applicable to whom? If you're drawing any transaction from B2B, supplier registered to a recipient who's registered. If you're making any export, if you're supplying to any government authority, if you're supplying to e-commerce, or supply on which reverse charge is paid by the recipient, in all the situation, you will have to raise a e-invoice. E-invoice is mandatory for audit trail, not necessary. E-invoice is mandatory for the compliance purposes. 10.175 crores. Yeah, so we will see the amendment, but I will just see that, because as of now, it is not yet amended. It is still saying that it has to be 10 crores itself. So if you see that the limit is still 10 crores, Ms. Priya, it has not yet become 5 crores. Okay, from 1st August 2023, the limit has become 5 crores, but let me see if it is notified yet. Yes, so from August 2023, where your turnover is 5 crores, then e-invoice is compulsory. So the limit has been reduced to 5 crore rupees with effect from 10th May 2023. Okay. How does the GST department gets to know? So while filing our returns, from that they will get to know the turnover limit. So if we have to understand the e-invoicing, for every class of persons, all registered person who's having turnover greater than 10 crore, the material still says 10 crore, but there is an amendment which makes it as 5 crores. And in any preceding financial year, then you're required to raise e-invoice. The e-invoice schema says unified standard format, and the e-invoice format is from GST INV1. it contains the mandatory specified fields, and it is applicable to all businesses across the country. E-invoice portal has a separate invoice called as IRP portal. You have to upload the details by a notified person. Then invoice reference number gets generated, and then this GST invoice will be valid only with a valid IRN, which means if you are under that limit where e-invoice is mandatory, there you have to raise a e-invoice, otherwise your normal invoice will be treated as not raised at all. So if e-invoice is applicable to you, then you have to raise it. So we have to remember 5 crore limit only. Yes, it is confirmed that you have to remember 5 crore limit only. What are the advantages of e-invoicing? Auto reporting into the GST portal. It also goes to the e-way bill. Substantial reduction in transcription errors. There are no errors. Early payments, cost reduction, reduction of tax evasion. This is the main advantage for the government, and elimination of fake invoices. Okay. Situations in which e-invoices are applicable: B2B supplies, a registered person and the customer is registered, e-invoice is applicable. B2C, supplier is registered, customer is not registered, e-invoice not compulsory. Exports, compulsory. Input service distributor, not compulsory. Reverse charge, a lawyer providing services, if he is crossing the limit of 5 crores, e-invoice is applicable for him. And other category, nothing, and import also not applicable. Where e-invoice is applicable, there you don't have to give duplicate, triplicate copies, just e-invoice is sufficient. Exemption. For these people, even if your limit crosses 5 crores, e-invoice is not compulsory. Who? When it is a SEZ unit, when it's a banking company, a GTA, goods transportation, passenger transportation, multiplex and cinemas, and government department and local authority. This is the latest amendment. This you have to remember, that government department and local authority e-invoicing not required. Okay. SEZ unit, it says, not a SEZ developer. So if it's an SEZ developer, for him it's applicable, but for a SEZ unit, not applicable. So SEZ unit not applicable, insurance company, banking, financial institutions not applicable, GTA not applicable, passenger transportation, and cinematographic films in multiplex screens, and government department and local authority e-invoice not applicable. Otherwise, it is all simple, nothing much to be mentioned in the e-invoicing. ई-इनवॉइसिंग क्या होता है, बेसिक समझा देता हूं. जब आपका टर्नओवर 5 करोड़ से ऊपर है किसी भी साल में, ना सिर्फ पिछले साल में, किसी भी साल में आपका टर्नओवर अगर 5 करोड़ से ज्यादा है, तो आपको ई इनवॉइस बनाना पड़ेगा. ई इनवॉइस का मतलब क्या है? एक अलग से पोर्टल है, ई इनवॉइसिंग पोर्टल. उसमें आपको आपके जब भी इनवॉइस रेज करते हो उसका डिटेल्स आपको ई इनवॉइस पोर्टल में डालना पड़ेगा. ठीक है. जब आपका टर्नओवर 5 करोड़ से ऊपर है, तो इस पोर्टल में क्या करेंगे, आप नॉर्मल इनवॉइस रेस करेंगे, उसके डिटेल्स ई इनवॉइस में रेस करेंगे. ई इनवॉइस में रेस करते ही क्या होगा, आपको एक IRN नंबर आएगा. ये है ई इनवॉइस का पोर्टल. इसमें आपका यूजर नेम पासवर्ड मिलेगा. आपको GST नंबर डाल के आपका डिटेल्स इमीडिएटली सेंड करना पड़ेगा. रिटर्न्स तो आप महीने के एंड में फाइल करते हो, लेकिन आपको ई इनवॉइस में क्या करना पड़ेगा, आपके इनवॉइस तुरंत डालना पड़ेगा, तभी वो इनवॉइस वैलिड होगा. ठीक है. जब आप ई इनवॉइस में एंट्री करते हो ये सब डिटेल्स, आपका एक बड़ा सा नंबर आएगा IRN. इसका मतलब गवर्नमेंट को आपके इनवॉइस के डिटेल्स मिल गए हैं, तो ये आपको करना पड़ेगा. इसे कहते हैं ई इनवॉइसिंग. अगर आपने यहाँ पे एंटर कर दिया तो ये डिटेल्स आपके ई-वे बिल में भी चला जाएगा और आपके GSTR1 में भी चला जाएगा. यहाँ पे एंटर करने का मकसद क्या है, गवर्नमेंट को डिटेल्स तुरंत मिल जाती है, इसीलिए ई इनवॉइसिंग बनाना पड़ता है. क्लियर है? कितने टाइम में अपलोड करना पड़ता है? पहले तो 30 दिन था, अभी तो बहुत कम हो गया है. सिर्फ 20 दिन में आपको डिटेल्स अपलोड करने पड़ेंगे. ये आ जाएगा आपका ई इनवॉइस. पूरा डिटेल्स बनने पे आपका ई इनवॉइस बाहर निकलता है. ठीक है, नाउ अभी हम जाएंगे एमसीक्यूज में। वॉलेंट्री इनवॉइसिंग, वॉलेंट्री इनवॉइसिंग अभी तो अलो नहीं करता है। इफ यू आर क्रॉसिंग द लिमिट ओनली देन यू शुड डू इट, अदरवाइज इतना डेटाबेस नहीं रहेगा, सो आई डोंट थिंक इट्स अवेलेबल, बट आई थिंक अगर वॉलेंट्री करना है तो फिर यू कैन स्टिल डू इट, यस यू कैन डू इट। Voluntary invoicing, yes, it is still possible. Your limit is not touched, still you want to do it, it is possible. Yes, if your turnover is more than 10 crores, Somya, then e-invoicing is mandatory. Now that 10 crores is got reduced to 5 crores further. So it is mandatory. Is it mandatory to mention the details of tax amount charged in the invoice? Yes, it is mandatory, and also to mention the nature of the tax. From before 1718 you will not check. Yes, before 1718 you will not check because तब तो GST नहीं था. So from 1st July 2017 onwards, you will check whether your limit crossed the 5 crores in the financial year. Tax credit can be taken on which of the following documents? Correct. Answer is E, on invoice and debit note. On these two things, we can claim the credit. So answer is E. What is the last date by which you need to issue the credit note? Yeah, once you raise the credit note, you have to report it, Anubhav. So earlier of the due dates, that is 30th November or the date of filing annual return, whichever is earlier, you have to raise an invoice and report it in that month. Easy MCQs, good, no? After a stressful, overloaded session, if you have a easy MCQ, that's good, which means you're paying concentration on the classes and you're finding the MCQs easy. Very nice. Very good. None of the above, because the last date to issue is not 30th November, not the date of filing, neither earlier. Any date you can raise a debit note. On or before, answer is C. Correct. 29th September. He removed it from the factory on 29th September. So by the 29th September is what should be raised. Removal is the key. Correct. So we have only 8 MCQs, 3 more to go. What is the answer for the sixth one? B and C, people are confused. He has to file nil return. Okay. Who has not rendered any taxable service, but still he has to file the nil return. Nil return is valid under the GST law. Seventh one, if there is a mistake in the e-way bill, what you do? We have not discussed the e-way bill, but I will tell you, if your e-way bill is wrong, you cannot revise it, you cannot cancel it because the time limit might have gone. But if you have a time, cancel the e-way bill and generate the new one. Okay. If you are in a position to cancel it. If you're not in a position to cancel it, then you can't do it. You will have to correct it in the. So that's the next question. What is to be done if the validity of e-way bill expires and you want to cancel it? You cannot cancel it. You have to do this. That is, you have to say that the goods are not supposed to be removed idly and the transporter may extend the validity period. If the e-way bill expires, then you have to extend the validity period. This e-way bill, of course, we will have a separate session for this. This is just a preparation for that.
Hello, students. So today's class we cover tax invoice, credit and debit notes. Yes, these last MCQs were relating to the topics which sir shall discuss in the forthcoming lectures. And yes, it feels good that yes, this session was an interactive one and you participated. And obviously, by learning in this way, your conceptual clarity will undoubtedly get enhanced. So just quickly, I am, going through the key provisions of this chapter, tax invoice, credit and debit notes. Uh, this topic is important and generally in the procedural aspects of GST, it also gets a good amount of weightage in the examination. The highest weightage is of the substantive provisions followed by the procedural law. Now I'm just searching the key areas and I just want quick answers from all of you, right? Then we shall conclude the session. What is the threshold limit for e-invoicing? Threshold limit for e-invoicing? 5 CR, very good. Okay. Now, in case a supplier is supplying exempted goods, then what do we need to issue? Refund voucher, receipt voucher, payment voucher, tax invoice. What is the correct answer? Miss Priya has given the reply. Other students also, please fast. Just Nidhi, Miss Nidhi, your answer is wrong. Let's say if I am supplying the exempted goods, right? Then which document I need to issue? Is it receipt voucher, payment voucher, or refund voucher, bill of supply, tax invoice? What is the correct document? Almas, good. Anubhav, good. Ishan, none. Ishan, no, your answer is wrong. Nidhi, your answer is wrong. See, if a person, registered person is supplying exempted goods or services, then he need not issue a tax invoice, rather a bill of supply is required to be issued. Okay. Now let's say Mr. Y is a registered person. He's registered under Section 10. He's dealing, he has opted for the composition scheme. Now, which document is required to be issued by Mr. X who has opted for composition scheme? Fast. Pooja, Miss P, your answer is right. Miss Priya, Mrs. Priya, your answer is correct. Devu, Soumya, very good. In case of exempted goods or supply, and as well as in case of a registered person who is paying tax under composition levy, in both the cases, we are not required to issue the tax invoice. Rather, we have to issue the bill of supply. Right now, let's say if a supplier has received some advance payment, then which document is required to be issued? Tax invoice, refund voucher, receipt voucher, payment voucher, bill of supply. Good. It means all of you have correctly understood the concepts taught by Deepak sir. Golti, your answer is receipt of voucher. Yes, receipt voucher. In case we have received some advance payment, then we need to, then our receipt voucher is required to be issued. Okay. Now, let's say if the tax which I have charged in my invoice is more than the tax payable in respect of such supply. If I have charged more, larger amount, higher amount of tax charged as compared to the tax which is payable in respect of a supply, then which document is required to be issued? Very good. I am really very happy, glad to see the correct answers in such a large number. Soumya, Devu, Johan, Julie, Ishan, Anubhav, Golti, Miss P, everybody have given the correct answer. Very good. Let's say the taxable value in my invoice is, let's say, rupees 50,000, and the taxable value which should be there in respect of such supply, that the correct taxable value is, let's say, 95,000, although the taxable value in my invoice has been charged at rupees 50,000. Now, which document is required to be issued in this case? Good. All of you, very good. All of you have given the correct answer. Now, let me know in case if at the time of receipt of advance, I have received some advance, but I don't know the nature of supply. Nature of supply is not determinable, or then what would be the nature of supply? How that supply shall be treated? Very good, very good. 18% is the rate of tax if the rate of tax is not determinable. And in case of supply, the nature of supply is also not determinable, then the supply is to be treated as an interstate supply. Very good. Now, uh, let me know uh, when do we need to issue a payment voucher? when recipient is registered and he receives a supply taxable under reverse charge basis, right? And that's very good. Now, please tell me the threshold limit for issue of consolidated tax invoice. Threshold limit for issue of a consolidated tax invoice. Please give your correct, full answer. Whether it is everybody, all of you are writing 200. Whether the threshold limit is more than 200, it is less than 200, it is less than equal to 200, it is equal to 200, or more than equal to 200. See, these are the nuances, nitty-gritties which you need to keep in mind during examination also, because what happens is generally we tend to remember the correct limit, but we tend to forget. Is it less than equal to? Is it more than equal to? Is it equal to? So please pay due attention to these things also, right? See, consolidated tax invoice is required to be issued in case value of supply is less than rupees 200, right? So, are you able to recap the provisions? Please note that consolidated tax invoice is required to be issued in case value of supply is less than 200, right? Less than is there in this case. Then, what is the threshold limit in case of, when can we issue the revised tax invoice? Consolidated revised tax invoice. Threshold limit for issuance of consolidated revised tax invoice. In case of interstate supplies, what is the limit? What is the limit of threshold limit of value where a consolidated revised tax invoice can be issued? Do you find this question a bit difficult? Let me know. Okay, Soumya. Pooja is saying no limit. See, till now, most of you have given the correct answer, but I think it seems to be difficult to you as no one has replied yet. It is, yes, very good. Julie has given the correct answer. Miss P is saying good. Yes, this is the case which happens. Miss P is saying it is 2,50,000, but less than or greater than. I don't remember, ma'am. That's why I was, I have asked this question particularly to you because students tend to forget it, right? So, in case of interstate supplies, where value of supply does not exceed rupees 2,50,000, 2,50,000 से अगर कम है, then a CRTI, consolidated revised tax invoice, may be issued separately in respect of all the unregistered recipients located in a state. So it is does not exceed rupees. That means it could be less than or equal to 2,50,000 up to 2,50,000. Yes, Shohan, you are correct. So I hope that we have thoroughly revised also the concepts, all the key points, very in a rapid fire round, like and most of the provisions I will say are clear to you. Any other provision if I could test from you? Is SEJ is required to issue e-invoice? Whether SEJ is required to issue e-invoice? Anubhav, Ishan, Julie. Correct answer, Devu. No, your answer is wrong, Devu. See, if you will go through the exemptions from e-invoicing, then you will see SEJ is not required to issue e-invoice, right? Similarly, insurance, banking company, financial institutions, including NBFC, they are not required to issue e-invoice. Now you have the let us recapitulate section given at the end of each chapter of the study material. So when you go through the chapter, attend the classes, then you may, at the end of your preparation strategy, go through the questions and answers. Then please go through the let us recapitulate section also, because all the provisions will get revised very quickly as well. And in case you want to add some of your notes or summary, you may add that in your notes itself, right? So I hope that we have revised all the key provisions. Right. Just one thing more, which is important in general, it is asked in the examination. Let me ask you, it is how many copies delivery challan is to be prepared in triplicate? Let me tell you. And in case of intrastate B2C taxable supplies, what is the threshold limit for consolidated revised tax invoice? In case of intrastate B2C taxable supplies, what is the threshold limit for consolidated revised tax invoice? Devu, very good, correct answer. Pooja, this time your answer is wrong. It means you find this question to be a tricky one. And I want participation from more students. See, let us revise this concept again. For each interstate B2C taxable supply up to rupees 2,50,000, state-wise consolidated revised tax invoice. For each interstate B2C taxable supplies more than 2,50,000, recipient-wise revised invoice. And if it is intrastate B2C taxable supplies, there is no limit. Irrespective of the amount, you can issue the consolidated revised tax invoice. Now, generally, one more point which might get tested in the MCQs, it is of the HSN code, right? So this is the last question of the day. If the annual turnover in the preceding year is rupees 6 CR, right? Then how many number of digits of HSN code is required to be issued? In case of B2B, and also let me know in case of B2C. Please let me know separately for B2B and for B2C. See, if annual turnover in the preceding financial year is more than rupees 5 CR, then whether it is B2B or it is B2C, the number of digits of HSN code is same. It is 6 digits. And if, let's say, annual turnover in the preceding year is rupees 5 CR, then tell me how many digits of HSN code for B2B and B2C? If the annual turnover is rupees 5 CR. Good, Julie. For if my annual turnover is rupees 5 CR, then for B2B supply, the number of HSN code is 4 and number of digits of HSN code is 4 digits. And for B2C supply, it is 4, but it is optional, right? So, and if my annual turnover is more than rupees 5 CR, please note, if my annual turnover is more than, so if it is equal to, then the number of digits are 4. And if it is more than 5 CR, then the number of digits of HSN code in case of B2B and B2C supplies are 6 digits. So hope you have gained some knowledge by, while I devise with you these concepts, key concepts. I'm giving you 2 minutes just to fill the feedback form for today's class. Please spare some time. I know you people are busy in studying, and once we end up the session, you generally don't get time to fill up the feedback form. And your feedback is really very important for us for improving, for motivation, for lot of reasons. Right. So please spare 2 minute time and you share your feedback in the feedback form. Thank you, Soumya. Soumya saying thank you, ma'am, for such enhancing revision. We are here in board of studies for students only. And also let me know through the chat whether once you are done with your feedback, right? Are you done? Anubhav has done. Anubhav is, Anubhav has sent first to Tej. Yeah, but share the feedback, fill the feedback in the feedback form, right? It is fine if you have filled in BOS mobile app. Soumya, we don't have another session for tax invoice chapter. That is why I have already adequately covered all the key provisions also at the time of revision. For next session, there will be the new next topic. Although, if in case you have any doubt for this chapter, that you may ask to the sir in the next session. There is no bar on that. Are you done? Have you filled the feedback form? Soumya, Miss P, yes, good. Okay, friends. So I hope that, in fact, I'm glad to see that most of the provisions, key concepts are already clear to you. And I think asking these short, rapid fire questions, it helps you. May I know your feedback? Do you feel these type of rapid fire quizzes and questions which I throw to you are helpful to you, or you feel just now you have understood the concept, so it is difficult for you to retain or remember? May I know? What do you feel? You may share your feedback in the chat box. Devu is saying very helpful. Yes, Chauhan, in the next class, next chapter will be there. So you feel these key nitty gritties of, the threshold limits, these help to you in remembering, in retaining. Devu is saying it boosts confidence. Thank you. Chauhan, session was very helpful. Thank you. Soumya saying, ma'am, it was easy to recall and retain the concepts taught today. Thank you, Soumya. So thank you, friends. Thank you. And meet you in the next class. In case you have any doubt, that you can always ask to the sir in the next class. And in the next class, there will be the next topic, new topic. Rapid fire round is excellent. Full of revisable points. Julie, thank you. Okay. Bye, Soumya. Have a nice day. Okay. Okay. Thank you, friends. Thank you. See you in the next class.